Well, hello. Today's movie is the 1975 Breakout, starring Charles Bronson.
A man is arrested in Chile and extradited to Mexico for a murder. He was framed by his grandfather for causing trouble with his business schemes. The man is sentenced to a Mexican prison. His wife hires a bush pilot named Colton to help rescue him. The first attempt at landing on a highway during a work in detail ends in failure. The pilot then comes up with another plan that involves a helicopter. He hires a helicopter pilot because it would take too long to proficiently learn how to fly a helicopter himself. Only the pilot backs out at the last minute when he learns of the prison break, and Colton must fly the helicopter himself. He lands in the yard, and the prisoner jumps in, and they escape under gunfire from the guards. Meanwhile, a rape is staged in the front of the prison to distract the guards. They manage to escape the guards and fly to Texas. There, a CIA agent sent to kidnap the prisoner gets chopped up by a propeller. Colton and his friends make $50,000 from this.
So, this is a movie, of course, starring Charles Bronson, and it had some other big names in it: John Huston, Robert Duvall, a young Randy Quaid as his partner, and of course, Jill Ireland, his real life wife. And this movie was loosely based on the book The 10-Second Jailbreak, The Helicopter Escape of Joel David Kaplan by Elliot Asenaught, Warren Hinkle, and William Turner. And apparently this Kaplan guy was, he ran some kind of business that was a front for the CIA that was funneling money into Latin America to overthrow governments and that. And apparently he was arrested and convicted of murder in Mexico, which he claimed was a setup. And his sister apparently hired someone to fly a helicopter that was, made up to look like a government chopper. And he just kind of flew in, and he jumped in, and they took him out of the prison and to Texas. And so this one, is obviously it was, made up a little more exciting. There was like a gunfights and that, and they were also decided to stage this kind of rape scene, and then the guards would chase them and that. So actually I found that was kind of a bit awkward in some ways, the rape scene, because it didn't really make much sense, to be honest. But it was just thrown in there, and of course they had to fight a CIA officer when they got to Texas and that. And it's spectacular, him getting chopped up by a propeller. Also, for the most part, also I didn't really quite get the movie. Didn't very well explain why, the grandfather wanted his grandson framed for murder and put in a Mexican prison. I guess it was because, he was, and it didn't really go into that very much, although that's what it was supposed to be. The John Huston, who was the grandfather, he, didn't really explain why he was doing this or really get much into the CIA background and stuff. So that was kind of a bit, confusing for the movie. Otherwise, though, I enjoyed this movie. It was a pretty fun movie. I love Charles Bronson. This one was actually one that he was a bit to be more lighthearted and comic than his normal movies. I think only like From Noon Till 3 or something was another one, and I guess you can argue the canon movies that they were comedies, but they weren't intentional. And this was it was filmed in the south of France, and they used gypsies to play the Mexicans. And it was a big success. Had $1 million budget. Plus, they also spent another 3.6 million on an advertising campaign. It was something called saturation booking, which was the first like a major studio used this, where they would spend heavily on advertising and put 1,350 prints simultaneously to movie theaters. And this seemed to be a very big success because they made $16 million on it. So it was a good solid movie. And this saturation booking success, actually, Universal saw it and decided to use it for Jaws. And we all know that movie was just a huge, massive success. So, in a kind of indirect way, this movie is responsible for the success of Jaws and Steven Spielberg's career, maybe. And also, he also starred with his wife, Jill Ireland. He was a guy who liked to star with her instead of another actress because he was more comfortable with her. I mean, honestly, they did have some good chemistry in this, like they always do in their movies. Apparently, the original director was supposed to be a Michael Ritchie, and he didn't really like the idea of hiring his wife, and Bronson got him fired and replaced by the film director Tom Grease. So, yeah, you don't mess with Charles Bronson and his wife. The producer was never really happy with this movie because of that. But it's still, it made a pretty decent amount of money. And it was a fun movie for the most part. I enjoyed it. And, I think it's, a pretty good, solid little action movie. And I'm always a big fan of Charles Bronson, so any movie he seems to star in is always awesome. And so if you stuck with me this long, I thank you. You're a unique individual.